everybody. I'm Kathleen McClung, zooming in to you today from San Francisco. I'm the guest editor for the MacGuffin this year, and it's a great pleasure working with managing editor Gordon Krupsky and our amazing crew of editors. We have 7 poetry editors and 7 prose editors, and it's a joy to work with these folks via Zoom and email and all the wonderful technology we have at our disposal. Gordon and I are delighted today to welcome 8 authors whose work is featured in our spring-summer issue of the MacGuffin, which looks like this. And we're really proud of this issue. We're proud of the writing, we're proud of the art, we're really proud that we were able to put this beautiful issue together, scattered across the country. And so today we're going to hear from 8 poets and flash fiction writers who are also scattered around the country. I think pretty much every time zone is represented today. Maybe Mountain Time is not here today, but everybody else is. So I'm really thrilled to have you with Gordon and me today. And I want to invite our listeners to subscribe to the MacGuffin, and I want to invite our listeners to submit work to the MacGuffin. We're reading year-round until late June. We'll probably take a break in the summer. And we don't charge any sort of reading fee. So please send us your best work, poems, stories, nonfiction. That's pretty much all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn things over now to Gordon, who will say a little bit more, and he'll be introducing our 8 readers. I'm so excited to hear everybody, and I'm really glad you're all here. So thanks so much for tuning in. And here's Gordon.
Hey there, I am Gordon Krupsky, managing editor here at the MacGuffin, zooming in today from the very empty campus of Schoolcraft College. It's currently at 7 p.m. on a Sunday. Not a whole lot of in-person classes happening today. Luckily for those students, I guess. Speaking of subscriptions, which Kathleen just mentioned, we are running a special promotion for this event. If you visit our web store at schoolcraftbooks.com, which a link should be appearing somewhere here. If you enter the code READING at checkout, you can get 25% off 1-year and 2-year subscriptions, in addition to volume 37.2, which all the authors today have work in. Just as a reminder, 1-year subscriptions will get you 3 issues, 3 of these. And if you get the 2-year subscription, obviously this will just double, but I don't have 6 issues in front of me to hold up. So maybe with some movie magic, we can splice that in. So that's about all from me. So let's get started today. Our first reader today, we're going to start it off in the prose category. Our first reader is Luke Rolfes. Luke teaches creative writing at Northwest Missouri State University. His book Flyover Country was published by Georgetown Review Press, and his stories and essays have appeared in numerous journals. He co-edits the Laurel Review and serves as a mentor in AWP's writer-to-writer mentorship program. Luke, take it away.
Thanks. Thank you, Gordon, and thank you, Kathleen, for having me. I'm going to read a flash fiction piece for everybody tonight. In this, obviously, this piece is called Siren. A tornado warning has been issued for our county. I see the alert on my phone before I recognize the dim sound in the distance. The chipped yellow siren wailing on the corner of Running Horse Road. I'm pushing against my sleeping husband. He is groggy for a few heartbeats. Look, I say, holding the screen in front of his face. I'm not reading anymore, he says. No, Mark, we need to go to the basement. And now he is wide awake, pushing aside the sheets and stumbling toward our daughter's bedroom. He doesn't look at me or say anything to me on his way out. Minutes later, we are pressed together in the downstairs storage closet. Our white cat is huddled between the legs of our 4-year-old child. The gray cat is nowhere to be found, and my daughter is crying. In between sobs, my daughter whispers that the tornado is going to suck up Monica. I stroke her long hair and tell her that Monica is going to be fine. The gray cat is a terrific hider, and she's likely tucked away under a bed upstairs, in between boxes of photographs and my old drawings. My husband is also crying. 7 or 8 years ago, his parents died from injuries sustained by the infamous EF5 Joplin tornado. We were never told the specifics of their passing, but the emergency response crew explained that their 2-story house had simply collapsed on itself. Like a star, my husband says when he mentions it to close friends and family members. I don't know why he thinks of their loss like this. Perhaps because he teaches 8th grade science, but he rationalizes their death in this way, how a star goes supernova after imploding on itself, the resulting shockwave being his parents' souls flowing into the heavens. But Mark's tears aren't about the gray cat, nor the sound of the tornado siren penetrating the basement wall that reminds us all of his parents' house collapsing like a star. He's crying because this afternoon he scrolled through my phone while I was in the shower and found a long string of messages I had sent and received to someone else. This string of messages spun him to the worst possible conclusion. I'm not a cheater, but I do believe you can have feelings for 2 people at the same time. I don't think that makes me a terrible person. No lines were crossed, I told my husband in the bedroom, my hair dripping, my body wearing only a towel. It's just a phase. I'm getting older. I wanted to feel young again. He wouldn't look at me. Please say something, I said. There was such sadness in his voice when he said, I knew you would do this. I shook my head, tried my best to hug him, but he seemed all at once impossible to wrap my arms around. Down in the basement, my daughter wails, her voice matching the siren on Running Horse Road. She calls again for Monica and clutches the white cat against her sunken chest. I reach for her hand, but my husband has me by the sleeve. He pulls me toward him until my mouth almost kisses his. This is the first time he's touched me all day. I can't go, he says. You have to do it. I know what he means. It's written across his face. Open the closet door, go upstairs, come back with the other cat, or don't come back. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Luke. I remember when we got that piece in and I was reading it, that ending, like I completely did not see coming, and it just smacked me across the face there. Love that piece. If you too, watching out there, are a fan of that, you can find another piece from Luke Rolfes in volume 37-1, which looks like this, also available online at schoolcraftbooks.com. Our coupon code reading, which is, I'm sure, appearing here with the help of movie magic, does not apply to that issue, but it does apply to issue 37.2, which looks like this, which all of our authors are reading from today. Next up, we are going to move over to the realm of poetry with Nasorri Pavone. Nasorri Pavone's poetry has appeared in River Styx, Sycamore Review, New Letters, the Cortland Review, Harper Pallet, Rhino, DMQ Review, the Citron Review, Huron's Fountain, and others. She's been anthologized in Beyond the Lyric Moment and was nominated for Best of the Net and twice for a Pushcart Prize. Take it away.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank Kathleen and Gordon and everyone at the MacGuffin for my publication and for this evening. I live in Los Angeles, and if you know LA, you'll recognize that both of the poems I'll be reading are very much influenced by LA. The first one is called Collision, a state of being I'll do anything to avoid. Collision. At night, she's being chased, or is late for a dinner date or a gig. Her body in dark clothing darts across the street, a faint blur in front of a car that skids to a stop. What happens? The body dives out of the way, or is flung in the air, or stands like a roadblock, lit within the breath of headlights. The car pitches back and forth from the brake slam, or gives in to the weight of the body upon impact, or was just driven slowly enough to provoke a face-off between unknowns. One reminded of the weapon he wields, the other grateful to lose only her stalker or her appetite, her guitar still strapped to her back. Good fortune would be if they both could keep their distance and only scream at each other. Two kettles releasing steam. Or better, if their body language expressed mutual apology. No words or window rolled down because they almost collided but didn't, but did in a sense, and are eager to put it behind them. And then she walks home and writes a song. And then my second poem, it's called Siren in a Snowdrift, and it is an environmental poem, both natural and unnatural. Siren in a Snowdrift. In the white living room, I didn't dare exhale, though I gasped upon entering, which was natural due to the disorientation of finding my senses flooded, then stranded by the absence of color. My apprehension of how simple it would be for my shoes, my fingers, my uncapped pen to leave their disruptive incrimination. I'm told to wait in the white room for the woman to interview me, to perhaps aid in her Arctic upkeep. It won't surprise if she's a platinum blonde, short and spiky without a dark root. Her commitment to white extended to the eradication of anything not. I could be her watchdog over leaking humanity. But there, a red pock blemishes the middle of a shimmery chiffon drape. A bit of flicked chili, a bead of blood about to roll down in a streak. No, it's a ladybug whose presence pierces. Siren in a snowdrift. I blow for her wings to bat, but she stays fixed upon her white flag. We both crept in, but she brought her beetle seed of Eden.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to Robert Hasselblad, another poet here. Robert Hasselblad of Tacoma, Washington, has been writing poetry for half a century. Recently retired from 40 plus years in the lumber industry, he now devotes time to writing, walking, reading, and speculative napping. Recent poems have appeared in Kin, the Big Windows Review, Avalon Literary Review, and Tipton Poetry Review.
First of all, I'm honored to have been selected both for publication in the MacGuffin and to participate in this reading. Thank you, Gordon and Kathleen, and the others in your crew. During the 1918-1919 influenza epidemic, my grandfather, Ernest Hasselblad, was removed from his homestead north of Billings, separated from his wife and young children for 4 months because individuals that were too sick or deemed contagious in that epidemic were forcibly taken to quarantine in field hospitals. So he spent 4 months of the winter of 1918 in a field hospital in Helena, Montana. And while he was there, the story came down that he routinely entertained children with his cartoons. So this is an imagined Look at that. 1, where I'm bound. On mornings when I feel well enough, I'm out of bed, go ask the nurses for blank paper, sharpen pencils with my whittle knife, and I head to the children's wards. That's where I'm bound to draw some lines between us and the festering plague that has put us in sick beds far away from our homes. 2, the girls' ward. Morning sun, hardly enough to call light, but I make my way into their hall. They hear me coming and start to call out. Laverne from Broadview, she lives on a homestead same as us, declares one day, "Don't I deserve a palace after enduring this shabby place?" So I draw her tall frame, playing fiddle music from a high tower to serenade her cows because they're so moody. Her groans carve a wondrous hum in my ears. Little Dagny, her pa's a miner. Flu came into the pit, went down the ranks. He's just 5 beds from me. She says, "Can you put me in the movies?" I cartoon a prairie starlet with a gaggle of birds around her. "You are the Meadowlark gal. The show's a smash hit," I say. "Meadowlark gal? What's that?" Answer, "A young miss who goes into the meadow whenever she larks to." More snorts and giggles. Then there's Eileen, so thin you almost don't see she's there. "Draw me with all my freckles," she commands. "They're about all that's holding me together." I dollop her with speck after speck until she looks like a polka dot frenzy, then sketch her holding a bottle of Old Scout spot remover. Oh, it's a joke, and right away, everyone has a big old laugh. But Eileen's eyes, they follow a different path. She's a fighter, for all that's worth here. Her freckles are the one weapon she dares trust. 3, the boys' ward. When I come through their door, the boys point at my drawing tools and holler, "Who are you going to make fun of today, old man?" One day I choose the loudest. Elmer's a towhead, his shock of hair thick, shaggy as a barnload of hay. "Your lucky day," I tell him. He pulls himself up proud for once. I catch his face just right. High cheeks, narrow chin, and that broad nose smack in the middle. And then make him bald. Just a fringe of frizz around his ears, add glasses and a cane, and ask, "Who's the old man now?" "Shucks, I'd rather skip old age than end up looking that way." Even so, he bathes in the laughter of his brothers in misery. Shy Olaf, he's a Swede boy from Anaconda, hardly says a word to anybody. When he talks to me, it's in the home tongue. En helig angel af Himmel. And yeah, I draw him with broad span wings, sweeping robes, but a straw hat instead of a halo, and strumming a banjo, not a harp. You'll have them other holy angels in heaven dancing like grasshoppers, I tell him. He convulses at such craziness, chuckles to himself for hours. Saul, he's a pistol, son of a rich merchant in Butte. 2 weeks back, Saul crowed to the room, "One day I'll be president." Then and there, I lined him out, a big top hat that came down over his ears, said he'd need the extra room for when his head swells up. Added pants big as a tent, so he'd never get too big for his britches. Oh, he got the humor, clapped and roared along with everyone else, and didn't seem to care that I'm just another sod-busting Hanyaker from the backside of nowhere. 4, rejoicing. I don't claim to do much. Salvation's solace, the preachers bring that. Comfort us with their prayers and promises. though they wear gauze masks, like the government tells all outsiders. Anyone still healthy must take every precaution. Their concern is admirable. I honor them for that. For here, in our honest hours, man, woman, and child, we yearn a return to where we live. Confess, we will take whatever years we can scavenge from our bodies. Just please, can't we stop coughing, spitting, shivering, and go home? My caricatures, silly things, redeem nothing more than hoots and snickers, grins and giggle storms. But if that ain't the noise of heaven, and why not call it rejoicing? Why not say we are more than sickbed, medicine, isolation, and not one of us, not one of us is ready to stop laughing. Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I know, for myself at least, that poem made me laugh quite a bit reading through it. So thank you. And next up, we have Liz in Clift. Liz has actually been on our pages, I think, a few times over the years. One of the names that always kind of clicks for me in my email, when you've been doing this job as long as I have, you start to recognize email addresses, and Liz is just one that I for sure recognize. So Liz in Clift holds an MFA in creative writing from Iowa State University. Her writing has previously appeared in the MacGuffin, as well as Rattle, Passages North, Salt Hill, Hobart, and elsewhere. She lives in the Pacific Northwest. Liz, take it away.
Thank you, Gordon, and thank you, Kathleen, and everyone else at the MacGuffin. Gordon, I've been so grateful for your support over the years. These first two poems are deeply influenced by the pandemic. And so the first one is Ghosts Still Bearing Fruit. Tubs of apples and pears freshly plucked from farmers' back 40s, where orchards stand like ghosts still bearing fruit. We're here for them and for the vintage cider press, older than the state we stand in, where alder and paper birch shed their yellow leaves with the rain, which is humbling the aluminum roof of this carport. Someone cranks the apples into shreds. Someone uses an old axe handle to lower the press. Cider gathers in a pot, in carboys, in flip-top bottles pulled from the workshop. Some work at cutting boards and toss occasional apples for the dogs, who sprint into the rain, into the thick of brush, who never bring the apples back. But that's not the point. There's Polish hunter stew and spiced cider, and as many apples as we can eat, which we do, passing judgments that don't matter. And sometimes that's also the point, especially when people keep getting killed for their beliefs or the color of their skin. The press was someone's father's, one of those gifts from beyond the grave, and we joke about dead dad cider because there's a pandemic, and who isn't dead or dying or staring mortality in the face every damn day? And how beautiful to press apples in community for a few Sunday hours while we're huddled in our jackets and avoiding the rain, which is calling us home. Social Club for the Newly Deceased. How do we begin to honor the dead, whose names we don't know but could or do, their bodies black-bagged and stacked in refrigerator trucks as morgues become social clubs for the newly deceased, lungs scarred, family far away, next to maskless strangers drinking at bars to forget their own grief, or be reminded of their own invincibility, which so far has a winning track record they're willing to bet on again and again. But the house always wins, and this time the stakes are life or lifelike or death. Do us part from friends whose minds and hearts are breaking, and maybe we'll never be put back together again, and maybe this is all for naught. The masking up, the staying home, the job losses, the family separated by mere miles and isolation. Maybe this is how we all go, our loneliness overruling our sense of survival, beautiful pack animals that we are, a few ill-fated breaths at the right time, and one virus that wears many crowns, replicating until we become a kind of bomb that might not detonate, at least not on us. And still our blood betrays vital organs. And if not this pandemic, then the next one. But what of the networks of dead, those stacked in the trucks, and those still walking among us, the restless spirits who haunt houses and photographs, not because they're malicious, but because too many people alive still remember their names. Ghosts who never thought they'd be the ones to go, or maybe did, who did everything right and who got sick anyway. Those whose memories we keep beating through our own warm hearts. And then this last poem has mention of a eulogy in it, and it was accepted a few days after the person being referenced by that eulogy died. And so I was very touched and also saddened to have this poem accepted in that time frame. So if my voice breaks at some point, that is why. The sea in my throat. We drank lattes at the Black Drop, our bodies white with climbing chalk, and he told me about hiking the PCT, asked about my writing, and said maybe one day I'd write a poem about him, not knowing I was already writing one while two women measured the length of the wall behind us using a flexible measuring tape. And we propped up the middle with our fingertips. He still had chalk on his forehead, and I could have spent hours in that coffee shop noticing his small details. The dimple in his right cheek, how he parsed his curls with his hand again and again. Nervous energy. The way he kept his hands wrapped around his coffee mug long after it was finished. How his body softened when I asked about politics. I could have let the hours turn into a walk to my place or his under the weak March sun. Could have let our words turn into sex, let myself get lost in the troubled oceans of his eyes. And 2 nights later, when we walked in the gale force winds around and around the harbor, bells on boats clanging like ghosts trying to find their way home, our dogs on alert, what I wanted was to end our small talk by kissing him on the pier where the boat would capsize sometime after we left. But first I needed to figure out a way to tell him my heart is wrapped in infinity and how love isn't some scarce object, except we're all so afraid of starving that that's a lie we tell ourselves, and how I had already fallen in love with him a decade before we met, by which I mean I'd fallen in love with a different man, so similar it felt like the sound of drowning. Sometimes I wonder if ghosts come from the living or if the dead sometimes walk among us. I sat in a coffee shop for hours with that first man too, let my heart break open as he read a book about bodies and trauma, worked a crossword, picked at some coffee shop treat my memories lost. We lived half a life growing each other up, and every year I spent months holding back the sea in my throat, waiting for him to drown, writing poem after poem that could have been a eulogy or a promise, sand in my fist. So I didn't kiss the man with the dog on the pier, didn't let myself acknowledge the ways I'd already begun to somersault toward falling in lake, didn't let our warm bodies buoy each other against the wind, let him get in his silver Toyota pickup at the end of the night without asking him to take me home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's always such a pleasure to receive your work and your emails in my inbox. So nice to actually be seeing you for a change. Okay, so we're about getting towards the end here. I'd just like to take an opportunity to remind all of our viewers at home, so to speak, that we are doing a promotion from today. This reading is taking place on October 17th. And this promotion will continue until November 30th. If you go to schoolcraftbooks.com and enter the code READING at checkout, you can receive 25% off volume 37.2, which all of our authors are reading from today. You can also use that code to apply to a 1 or 2 year subscription if you so choose. Back to the action though. Next up, we have some more poetry, this time from Bob Claps. A father of 3, Bob Claps lives in his native Connecticut with his wife and rescue dogs. New work is forthcoming in Tar River Poetry, Patterson Literary Review, and Image. A Pushcart nominee, his first book, Casting, from Antrim House Books, is now available. And Bob, feel free to take it away.
Thank you. I'll read 2 of the 3 poems that show up in this issue. And thanks again to Gordon and Kathleen for that. These were spring poems. I think all I'm going to write is spring poems from now on, as a matter of fact. No, I'm only kidding. The first one's called Weeding. Each April on the first warm day, with dandelions already shoving their way up between the greening blades, she'd lead me around the yard, pointing to her perennials, circling the mailbox, and running the length of the gravel drive, making sure I didn't mistake them for weeds she was about to yank. Her gardening forks tines flashing in my mind again this 20th spring of her death. I'm out with the sprayer, whispering crocus, tulip, iris, bending close to double check, looking for the yellow stalk and thick fleshy leaves of that weed she loathed, reminding me once as she kneeled in the turn bed that my father would be buying rounds at Baldy's Tap, that his empty half pints still clinked and rolled under the car seat, whispering that I too should watch my step if I wanted to stay married, before she thrust her spade deep under another spreading dandelion, then proudly hold up the root with its hairs so pale and delicate in the blinding spring light. And the second spring poem is April East Hampton. Peepers, the year's first, scattered around the rim of the night pond, a few off to the southwest side, some on the opposite edge. But it's the loud one straight ahead that brings me with flashlight out to the deck, knowing only my long dead father can croak like that, offbeat and off key, the way he'd croon strangers in the night, dancing a tipsy little two-step with Doris or Rose at Baldy's Tap. That frog so persistent I have to train my light out a good 100 yards, close to the Twin Oaks where I thought he was, but isn't now. Like the quarter my father would make disappear and then pull from behind my ear, his hands always faster than our eyes. And maybe this is one of his tricks, getting my attention with that voice, raspy and intermittent in the thawing air. The voice I start to follow, then stop, then start again, knowing it's still mud season, and if I sink ankle deep, there is no way I could ever get out. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Bob. All right, next up, we're gonna have, I believe we have 2 readers left now. We're gonna close it out with two selections of prose now. First up, we'll have Philip Deal. Philip Deal's work has appeared in Shift and Tamaqua. He is also the author of a nonfiction novel, Love in an Iron Bowl. He has an MFA from Wichita State University. Deal is an avid snorkeler and photographer. He lives with his wife and daughter in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Philip, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Gordon, and thank you, Kathleen. We love editors, especially those who say yes, right? We're all good friends with you, and really, we appreciate all the hard work. It's great to be here with other writers. It's always good. The name of this story is Biting. His canines were never intended for this. His gums burned. His teeth felt hot. When he stopped to catch his breath, blood dripped from the floor mat, struck the steering wheel, then fell onto his lips. The steady upside down flow, making it hard to think. You have to do this, he told himself. He bit into the seatbelt again, thrashing with flat incisors. He tried to pull his arm free, the one he still could feel, but it wouldn't budge. His seatbelt doing its job, holding him snugly in place, upside down in the center of the road. He tried to remember what direction they had come from, how long ago they had left, what road this was, but his head had split open and his eyes were filled with blood. Right now, he thought, as if desire could sharpen. He bit harder, although he knew already that hard didn't matter nearly as much as steady. He heard a bottle roll in the well of the roof, and for a moment, moonlight reflected off glass, making him feel like he was inside a kaleidoscope. He tried to remember how many bottles they had tossed into the back, wondering if there might be some number low enough to matter. The Owl and the Moon had been a friend's idea, loud music and expensive beer, but beyond 150th, there hadn't been many streetlights. He was trying to remember what time the bar had closed when he felt the belt rip for the first time. He opened his mouth, spat blood, then a piece of tooth. He tried to follow the tooth to the roof, but he couldn't see clearly, too much blood in his eyes. Without a free arm, he was unable to block the stream of red that blinded him. Still, he reminded himself, the belt had finally torn. That was something. He wondered if someone better at math might be able to calculate how long a man his size, hanging upside down, could live out here. Temperature mattered. He had seen enough Alone and Sole Survivor to know about hypothermia. He tried not to look to his right, where the cold air was rushing in. On that side was a gaping hole made by the utility pole that had plunged through the windshield and stopped the car. He shouldn't have to see what was over there. Not again. He hadn't chosen which side the pole went through. Wind whipped through the car, rolling bottles across the roof. Those are going to be a problem, he thought. Cut the fucking belt, he told himself, as if insisting could sharpen. He bit the belt hard, then thrashed his head like a hungry shark trying to rip through. Blood was everywhere now, on his teeth, in his eyes, on the part of the utility pole that stuck through his date's neck. He didn't even know her family name, only Katie something. Someone was going to ask if he knew where she lived. He didn't. Where she worked? No. He knew she was old enough to be out drinking. He had checked, although he didn't think legal was going to matter much when they saw what he had done. He heard a plaintive wail, and although he didn't know how long it would take that sound to reach him, it didn't take a genius to figure out one important thing. There was some exact moment when however long it would take that siren to find him was exactly how long it would take to bite himself free. He had until that moment, not 1 second more. Chew, for God's sake, he thought. Then he bit the seatbelt as hard as he could, all at once, with canines, incisors, and molars, as if biting could somehow set him free. Thanks.
So our final reader today is going to be Derek Andersen. Derek Andersen is an Illinois Wesleyan alum working as a copywriter in Chicago. His short stories have appeared or are forthcoming in Barrel House, Columbia Journal, the Emerson Review, Maudlin House, and elsewhere. Find him on Twitter at Derek J. And.
Thanks for that introduction, and thank you, Kathleen and Gordon, for having me at this reading. So my story is called Timeshare Freedom Group. It's based off a radio ad that I heard one too many times and decided to make a brutally honest version of that commercial. So Timeshare Freedom Group. Did some high-pressure salesperson twist your arm into buying a timeshare? Did they forget to mention that your fees would go up year after year after year? Did they neglect to prepare you for the possibility that Gina would take the kids and this little unit in New Buffalo, Michigan would become a prison cell you'd visit out of sheer obligation? Is your timeshare only available in late winter when the sky and lake assume the same shade of gray, when the days fade into each other with no horizon to mark their passage? Does its nautical decor, the seahorse nightlight, the barnacle-crusted anchor, the life preserver dangling just out of reach, make you feel like a doomed sea captain on his way to the depths? Do you spend that first Sunday binging pornography, trying to block out the memories? Dana frolicking in the sun-gilded waves, Jonah mauling a beach ball with his toddler arms, Gina squeezing your hand after you tuck the kids into bed, her smile resting somewhere between tired and contented. Do you get so lonely you acquiesce to the siren song of a horny singles in your area banner ad? Do you back out when it asks you for your credit card number? Do you occasionally find something the cleaning crew missed? A stray sock, a chewed up pacifier, a used Band-Aid floating in the pool? You don't believe in ghosts, but you do believe in energy. Does this place pulse with a misery so unadulterated you could feel it in your organs? When you shut your eyes, can you see the other families, your co-owners, filing through, white-knuckling their week-long stints with the same desperation? In the night, when you do sleep, do clauses from that Byzantine contract invade your dreamscapes? Saxony Properties LLC maintains sole discretion over rental periods. Additional payments for maintenance fees, taxes, and special assessments apply. Delinquent fees will be deducted. Strict no cancellation policy. Do they jolt you awake, drenched in sweat, tangled in low thread count bed sheets? To stave off cabin fever, do you trudge to the stray dog? Do you find yourself ordering the cheese-stuffed, bacon-wrapped, deep-fried abomination you swore off forever? Do you wash that sucker down with a couple cold ones, and then a couple more? Do you watch helplessly as your index finger dials those familiar 7 digits? When Dana picks up, does your breath catch in your throat? Do her words cut like glass shards? Daddy, is that you? When the tears come, do you hang up? In the stagnant hours of the night, when the trees cast long skeletal shadows across your walls, do you boot up your laptop? Do you type that name into the Facebook search bar, the one you've heard pass through the grapevine in grave whispers? When you hit enter, do you grit your teeth? There in the jaundiced glow of the moon, do you behold a photo of Gina and the kids cradled in the arms of another man? Do you covet the angelic white sand, the crisp Florida sea stretching infinitely behind them? Do your hands begin to operate without your consent? Do they drench the area rug in rubbing alcohol? Do they flick a cheap drugstore lighter to life? Does your heartbeat pound through your skull as they guide the flame to the big wool fringe, as they let it dance there on the precipice? When the blaze eats through the kitschy captain's wheel pattern, does a moment of catharsis wash over you? Is it quickly overshadowed by visions of vindictive lawyers, salivating bill collectors, and Jonah's pink hand pressed against the other side of a plexiglass wall? Does the fire extinguisher sputter weakly in your grasp? Do you heave up prayers to the God you long ago denounced? Do you squeeze the handle until your knuckles go numb? Does a great deluge of foam at last come forth and smother the flames? Do you plop down onto the half-charred ottoman and let out a deep breath? Is it a sigh of relief or just a sigh? It's not right and it's not your fault. Timeshare Freedom Group has helped thousands of people get rid of their regrettable, overpriced timeshares. Call 800-954-2957 when you realize the stillness is worse than the flames. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Derek. One follow-up question. Have you called that phone number? Is that the number for the
that's the legit phone number for the service. Yeah. So if anyone is stuck in a timeshare, feel free, call up that number right now.
Perfect. So not only a great story, but a great life tip.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that concludes our reading for today. Don't forget, we do have a promotion going until November 30th, where you can purchase the issue that includes everything you heard today for 25% off. Just enter the code READING in at checkout, schoolcraftbooks.com. And yeah, it'll be great. And I think closing us out today, our boss over here, Kathleen McClung, has some final words.
I just, my final words are thank you to these amazing writers and poets for sharing your work with us in this, brave new world of Zoom. I really wish we could be together in a real space, in a real room, but Zoom brings us together from across the country. So that's a real plus. Part of being an editor is saying no, 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 no. And today was a big yes to all of you, and yes to creativity, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to sort of swim around in yes today. Thanks to every person on this call, particularly thanks to Gordon Krupsky, who is a total delight to work with. And Gordon's been managing editor at the MacGuffin for 10 years and is a really gifted editor. So thank you, Gordon, for all you do. And thanks everybody for being here. And let's stick around and chat informally for just a few more minutes. I would really love that. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.
For more information on the MacGuffin, a publication of Schoolcraft College, visit us online at schoolcraft.edu/MacGuffin. Here you can find more information about the magazine's history, as well as our submission guidelines. Please note that as of October 1st, all submissions must be sent through Submittable. Schoolcraftbooks.com, the official website of the Schoolcraft Bookstore, is your one-stop shop for all things MacGuffin. Just navigate via the Shop tab to access the MacGuffin landing page. Click through to find single issues, and at the bottom of the page, 1- and 2-year subscriptions. Don't forget, from now until November 30th, enter the code READING at checkout for 25% off of volume 37.2 and both 1- and 2-year subscriptions.